Automakers have gotten greedy. Pops Stellantis, the parent brand of Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Alfa Romeo, and Fiat, has increased their MSRPs by 50% over the past 5 years, while inflation has only been 22%. We recently did a video, Dad, talking about the affordability crisis. Let's break into car price inflation. We have it broken down by the various manufacturers. And I don't know, when I looked at this, man, I was shocked at how greedy some of the OEMs have become.
Yeah, when you look at some of these numbers, the fact that Stellantis, the products that you referenced, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Alfa Romeo, Fiat, the fact that they've gone up 50%, 50.61% in 5 years is astounding, especially when you consider like what was the niche brand in there, Jeep. Their prices have gone up equally as much, but yet for the last 5 years, their sales have stagnated or are going backwards. So what you see when you look at some of these manufacturers is they had the nerve during the pandemic to continue to raise prices because supply was low and demand was relatively high. And now that supply is higher and demand is relatively low, these dealers are getting crushed because their vehicles, which at one time were affordable, are no longer affordable.
We see that in the market days supply data. Pops, the last time we looked at car price inflation was July of 2023. And at that point in time, Stellantis had a 160 days supply. They were leading the league in terms of inventory in the United States. And now, Dad, they are up to a 225 day supply, which means that at the current daily sales rate of Stellantis products, it would take them 225 days to sell everything that's currently in inventory. That is bad. That is very, very bad.
Yeah, especially when the industry wants the day supply to be somewhere between 60 and 90. 75 would be like a perfect day supply. And there will be many who will say, but Stellantis and Ford and GM, they built up extra inventory because they knew there was going to be a strike. And there was a strike for 6 weeks. And even though they built, knowing that, nobody wanted to buy it. Okay. It's one thing to build it if somebody's looking to buy it. It's another thing to build it and you haven't been able to sell it prior to that. And we've seen with this major growth in the on-hand supply that it just indicates that many of these dealers, not all of them, but many of them are struggling to find buyers for these products.
Number 2 on the list, Dad, the second most egregious price increases for their new vehicles over the past 5 years. Hyundai, Kia, Genesis, also up, I'm going to round it, man, 50% over the past 5 years, 49.67%. Hyundai, Genesis, Kia have made the intentional decision to go more upmarket and upscale. They are producing more expensive vehicles and more expensive trim levels than they were in prior years, especially 5 years ago. However, Dad, their days supply has only gone up from 45 to 68. So more inventory sitting around, but still not a ton, obviously relative to like Stellantis, for example. But what do you make of this, Dad? Hyundai, Kia prices, MSRPs up 50% over the past 5 years.
They made an intentional decision to go a little more upscale, and they added some models to their lineup that naturally took them more upscale. I'm thinking of the Kia Telluride and the Hyundai Palisade. Those were vehicles that they came out with that they had not been in that particular market in the past. And so when they entered that market, it naturally brought their pricing up because it was a whole new vehicle for them. And then, of course, the Genesis brand, every time they add a vehicle, it's at the higher end, so it's bringing it up. But you look at Telluride, you look at Palisade, you look at the GV70, the GV80, those vehicles, and yes, the pricing is going to be higher. It doesn't necessarily translate into still being affordable. They are brands who are seeing growth, but my suspicion is that in the not too distant future, we'll see that growth hindered because they have gone so far upscale that it's going to be more and more difficult for people to buy them.
Talk about a brand who has seen their growth hindered, Dad. That would be Ford, the third largest price increases over the past 5 years For any automaker, their average price increased 37.29% over the past 5 years. Days supply up from 84 to 133 days. We've seen Ford sales year over year for the month of November, for example, were actually down just a touch, which was surprising and not the same as the market in general. And I think it's worth mentioning, we hear it all the time in our community and from our partners, that Ford sells a lot of their cars and trucks into service loaner fleet as well. So this is not inside baseball. There's juice in the numbers, happens everywhere in the auto industry.
Yes.
So Ford raised, kind of to your point about Hyundai, like maybe Hyundai Kia hasn't seen the pullback in demand quite yet, even though their prices are up 50% over 5 years. But Ford certainly has, even though their prices are only up 37.29%. Yeah.
And I would think a lot of that for Ford has to do with their EV division. Those vehicles on the electric vehicle side are sitting. They're really struggling to move those units. And those units are also much more expensive than comparable ICE vehicles. So that's one of the reasons that you've seen their pricing go up almost 38%.
Volkswagen have increased prices, nearly 36% over the past 5 years, while their days supply has gone from 80 to 107. That's Audi, Volkswagen, and Porsche. General Motors up only 29.69%. So the lowest of all the domestic brands, that's Chevy, Buick, Cadillac, and GMC. Their days supply from 67 to 92. And then we have Honda, Dad. Honda is Honda and Acura, and their price increases are 29.43% from a 30-day supply to a 52-day supply. This group in here, they're in the middle rung, kind of fair price increases, I guess, when you consider their ranking and the fact that inflation was 22% over the same period of time.
They've operated for the past 2 years in a very, very short supply of inventory. And they haven't been quite as egregious with price increases as some of the other brands. But one of the things they have done, both at Honda, Acura, and Toyota and Lexus, is they have dropped their lowest entry-level trims so that what was the least expensive trim has gone up one trim level. And that is one of the reasons why you've seen the MSRPs go up, in Honda's case, 29.5%, and in Toyota's case, 23.5%.
Yep, like you said, Toyota at 23.46% over the past 5 years. Go check it out. We did an awesome research piece called Trimflation that was over on the Autopian, so go check that out. Talks all about what you just described. Just getting rid of entry-level trim options and just making the more expensive ones. That's one way to have car price inflation. Two brands, Dad, have increased their MSRPs less than inflation over the past 5 years. So kudos to these brands. Number one would be Subaru. They've only increased their prices 19.05%. Number two would be Nissan at 19.1%. So pretty much the same. Dad, these brands must be congratulated and kind of held on a pedestal. They've had so many opportunities to raise their prices and they haven't. So Nissan, which is Nissan and Infiniti, up 19.1%, and Subaru up 19.05%. Folks, if you're looking for an affordable vehicle, those are your options.
Absolutely. And I'll say this for Subaru, they have, for the longest period of time, they've been a niche brand. They have a cult-like following. And one of the reasons they have that cult-like following is because they haven't taken advantage of that following. They've always have provided good value for money. And every vehicle is an all-wheel drive vehicle. So the Subaru owners love that brand and won't give it up. You'd have to pull the keys out of their dead fingers to get rid of those customers.
All right, there you go, Subaru. That's your next ad campaign. Please give credit to my father. If you are interested in this data and more, go check out the links in the description. We'll link to the guide back on CarEdge.com where we talk about all of this and some other interesting insights. And if you saw a brand missing, I should say, from the list, let us know which one you want to see and we will add it to our research list. Pops, thank you very much for doing this. I will talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Handsome.